Before we get underway, let's just establish this kind of video is not going over a similar piece of drama to Jake Virtanen that we had with Brock Boeser. There is no, Virtanen is going to get traded little thing coming out in the media that's been making its rounds. It's not the same. This is a different kind of drama, but drama is like the best word to describe what's going on right here. So, we're talking about Jake Virtanen here today, and if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, you've probably been following Vancouver Canucks related media outlets and journalists and beat reporters on Twitter, listening to them on podcasts, and hearing what they have to say on the radio. So, if you've been following all that stuff, you may have seen just what exactly we're talking about right here when it comes to Abby's own Jake Virtanen, drafted 6th overall by the Vancouver Canucks at the 2014 NHL Entry Draft. Now, Virtanen is a guy who we just can't seem to stop talking about. We've been making videos about the Canucks and about Virtanen specifically, going over like the past 3 years pretty much. But talking about Virtanen here today as the Vancouver Canucks get back to their practices and actually prepping themselves before playing the Winnipeg Jets in the prelim game and then eventually the Minnesota Wild in the play-in series leading up to the Stanley Cup playoffs. We had ourselves a Vancouver Canucks scrimmage the other day. This was broadcasted yesterday, and it was quite interesting. Because there was one moment throughout the scrimmage where the commentator, Brendan Batchelor, because they actually had Brendan Batchelor over there commentating the scrimmage to the radio folks as if it were an actual game, and it was awesome to listen to, but there was one moment in this scrimmage where Brendan Batchelor had to apologize to the audience because of the audio that was picked up by the in-arena microphones that was said by one of the Vancouver Canucks on the ice. This is what happened. We're going over to Taj. He's got so many tweets that update us on this Virtanen situation and give us quotes from other sources, but of course I'll leave a link in the description to said sources as well. Virtanen lost the puck on a breakaway, and he was mad. He threw a hit, and Horvat called him out after the hit. The audio was then clipped from the Sportsnet 650 website by Grady Sass, former bar down guy and current social media manager for Monkey Knife Fight. He cut up the audio. I'll leave a link in the description to the audio as well as the full broadcast. The quote from Bo Horvat read this: "Tuna, just because you effed up doesn't mean you get to run around and hit someone from behind. Get the F going." And Brendan Batchelor kind of chuckles. He says apologies for the Sportsnet crew. But this is what Horvat yelled out towards Jake Virtanen, and it was caught on the air. It was played on your radio if you were listening to the audio. But furthermore, we had a little bit more about Jake Virtanen that was reported by a few other people. This is what Thomas Drance said on Jake Virtanen in the most recent episode of the Vancast, the collaborative podcast between Thomas Drance and Jeff Patterson. It's kind of done in a similar style and conversational-like manner as the Patcast was with the late Jason Botchford, RIP by the way. This is what Thomas Drance said on the Vancast. Virtanen had a really tough night. And Drancer also talked about how his teammates don't think much of his defensive game, and that's why they were trying these moves on him. Well, what moves are we talking about? Let's go over onto Reddit and talk about a comment from Claude Giroux. He's probably not the Philadelphia Flyers Claude Giroux, just a user named Claude Giroux. TSN 1040 was talking about Virtanen in the morning too, and they said he was horrific last night. And now this comes out? This post on Reddit is the Bo Horvat quote about what Virtanen did and what Horvat responded with. I saw another tweet that said the team doesn't trust him defensively, so they take chances around him. If you saw the scrimmage highlights, you'd see that Virtanen literally got toe-dragged and sniped by Chris Tanev. Hard to imagine a scenario where he stays if the team doesn't even trust him. Now that in itself is a different perspective. That's just an idea brought upon by one Redditor suggesting maybe because the Canucks themselves don't trust him defensively, they may be seeing their way out with this player in the long term, but obviously that's just one guy and one Reddit commenter's own perspective on the matter. There isn't really anything in the media suggesting that Virtanen could be traded, but we will have a little bit more as to what the value could be later on in this video. But isn't that kind of weird? Thomas Drance notes it that the Canucks are starting to take themselves a little bit more easily when it comes to trying to get around Virtanen. It's not every day you see Chris Tanev trying to toe drag and snipe on somebody, but he does it here against Jake Virtanen, and according to Drancer, the Canucks themselves are able to use a little bit fancier moves because they know they're going up against Virtanen in a one-on-one battle. And that's kind of unfortunate. Like, you must feel really bad if you're a Jake Virtanen looking at all this stuff and seeing it. Okay, Chris Tanev, who doesn't normally do so much as a nice little backhand forehand, just toe dragged the heck out of me before going top cheese and sniping one. Okay. Furthermore, we have ourselves Harmon Dale's article that he published yesterday talking about the Canucks simulated game and their scrimmage. I'll leave a link in the description to that full Athletic article, but a quote from there that was posted onto Twitter by Taj says there is no need to start ringing alarm bells, but yes, Virtanen's disappointing defensive play was one of the biggest things that stood out. So you see, the narrative is kind of coming here. This is not the same Brock Boeser kind of drama that we had that we're bringing up here with Virtanen, but instead it's a different issue on how he hasn't necessarily been the best at the Vancouver Canucks training camp and scrimmage so far. However, this was said earlier on TSN. Matt Sekera said that he spoke to somebody about Jake Virtanen's trade value, and that person replied maybe closer to a 5th-round pick to a 3rd-round pick. So Jake Virtanen may not even be worth all too much on the trade block, assuming this one tweet and this one quote is completely accurate, which I don't really know if it is. I mean, Virtanen was a former 1st-round top 10 pick, who currently is, in my mind at least, a capable middle 6 NHL player. I don't know if that's worth a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th, especially since he's only 23 years old. Now, I personally am a believer in Virtanen. When I was on Hot Take Hockey John's 2020 playoff preview video for the Canucks and the Wild series, I spoke very, very highly about Jake Virtanen and how he could potentially be the one guy that comes out in this series against the Wild, explodes offensively, takes everybody by surprise, and all of a sudden is one of the best and most impactful players in this series. The way he plays the game, his offensive traits, and his physicality, they definitely can promote positive traits out there. But it's just kind of interesting to take a look at what's going on in the scrimmages, seeing how he's missing breakaways and he's getting frustrated and Bo Horvat is calling him out on the ice. To be fair, I do understand that the way Horvat talked about him and the way he yelled to Virtanen that was picked up on the radio, that's just normal kinda hockey lingo. It isn't really a surprise to hear anything like that, especially from a live environment. But all the stuff combining here where we see Jake Virtanen not necessarily being the best out there, especially with his teammates finding the willingness to toe drag and do crazy deeks around him a lot more, it certainly is interesting to think about. So talk to me in the comments below what you think about Jake Virtanen. Has your opinion on him and the way he may be able to play in this play-in series against the Wild changed after seeing this video? Has it changed after seeing the way that he is being treated by his teammates and the way the media is portraying his training camp to actually not being all too great? Is this a sign of a poor performance to come in the 5-game series against the Wild, or is this only going to make Jake Virtanen hungrier? The clip where Bo Horvat yells at him only happens because Jake Virtanen gets frustrated, he missed a breakaway, and eventually hit a guy into the boards. That's why Bo Horvat called him out entirely. But that looming frustration, the acknowledgement that your teammates are taking it easy on you, and that they see you as a defensive pylon to some extent, is that going to make him hungrier once the Minnesota Wild enter the playing field, and once it's time to go? You could argue it both ways, obviously, but because I'm the guy that I am, and I sincerely believe that Jake Virtanen can evolve into a very capable top 6 50-point scorer in the NHL one day, I'm gonna say that he probably does at least use this short-term leverage to his advantage, but obviously that's just my educated guess. You can talk to me in the comments below what you think about Virtanen and this whole situation. I called it drama because it's kind of dramatic, isn't it? Obviously it's no trade drama, but it is certainly something to note, at least in my opinion, which is why I made a video about it in the first place here. But talk to me in the comments what you think about all this stuff. I hope you enjoyed this video. So that's Trollus99, and bye.